Hey, this is Phil with Perpetual Growth Group, and I wanted to shoot a quick video today to talk about one key to success in any aspect of life. That could be sales, that could be even internet marketing, and I'm going to talk about how to tie that together, and that is listening. Okay, I was reading again the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's a great book. I recommend reading it. I've read it more than once just because there's a lot of stuff in there, and you take away more every time you read a book like that. And so, what I wanted to kind of go over today is listening to other people. We have training in speaking, we get training in writing, we get training in reading. We don't get a lot of training in listening, and that's one of the most used forms of communication. And so, what most people do, and I'm guilty of this all the time, even now, even knowing that this is important, okay, is that we listen to have to know what we're going to say next, right? So we'll be listening to someone and we're already thinking of, well, what's my response going to be to that? Especially in arguments. I mean, you'll see people argue and neither of them are listening to each other. And in reality, they're a lot of times they're both trying to accomplish the same thing. And because they won't listen, they never ever arrive at at some kind of resolution in the argument. And so they just keep throwing words at each other, and then it just gets meaner and meaner until finally someone just had enough and they can't handle it anymore, right? Or in some cases it escalates into violence. So listening is different. Actually, empathic listening is what Dr. Stephen Covey calls it, and I like that term because we in today's world we're so caught up, and I see this a lot in politics. I see it a lot in things where people talk about, and it's very dear to their heart, and that can be religion. Sometimes that's even sports teams, right? If you're super passionate about that. And I'm not saying not being passionate about being passionate about this stuff is bad. I'm just trying to make a point that when we stop listening to the other person, we are closing ourselves off to really understanding and actually strengthening that relationship. And let me give you an example. So when you talk to somebody, or when I've talked to people and maybe they don't see the world the way that I see it, I have two options. Well, I have several options, but really two important options. I can either listen to that person and try to understand really how they're feeling based on their world experience, based on their perception of how they see things, and really come to know what that person feels. Or I can think about what my experience has been and why they either are right or wrong, what my perception of the world has been and whether they're either right or wrong, and so on and so forth. And so we see through this lens of what our life is like. And when someone says something, our brain initially goes into, is that right or not, based on my world experience. But if you can suspend that, especially in situations where maybe things are heated, and just stop seeking to make them understand you, but seek to understand them first, you'll have a lot more success. And this is true in any environment. This is true in relationships, marriage, when you're talking to your kids, instead of, and I'm not saying you don't want your kids to make right decisions. I want my kids to make right decisions, but actually when they say things, not trying to throw my agenda onto them, and instead listening to where they're coming from and really trying to get at the emotion of what they're feeling and why. They will form their own conclusions if I just understand them. But if I try to say, if my kid talks about that, somebody dropped out of school and they're making all kinds of money as a mechanic or whatever, and maybe they should do that, and instead of going, well, that person's going to be paying for it later, they're going to wish they'd have stayed in school and wish they went to college. And that may be true, but your kid isn't going to hear that. Your son or daughter isn't going to want to hear that. What they're going to want to hear is, oh, really? Well, how do you feel about that? Or what do you think? And not probing questions to try to hurry and counter them again, just like is a natural tendency that we want to do. But make that shift to really trying to understand what it is they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and with no judgment. Okay. And that works really well in a marriage. It will help you form a bond. And what happens is when that person feels understood, when they really feel like you understand, and what I would do is repeat back to them what you think they're saying, and they will correct you and they'll say, no, that's not it. And just say, well, explain to me what I'm missing or where I'm wrong. And they'll fill in the pieces, or maybe you're completely off base, right? And you just really don't know where they're coming from, which is fine as long as that stays open where you're like, no, I really want to understand what you mean, what you feel. Okay. And by doing that, you'll find a shift when you reach that point where they all of a sudden feel understood, and it gives them this good feeling inside, and there's a bond that forms between you and the other person, and they will now become open to seeing the way that you feel and think. And maybe you don't agree. I'm not talking about you agree with the way that they think, because I don't agree with the way a lot of people think, and that's the way everyone is, right? So it's not shifting the way that you think about something, but seeking to understand what someone feels and thinks based on their life experience without trying to inject yours into it. Okay. And by doing that, you'll be given space by them. There's like a reciprocity that happens, and you'll be able to express yours. Now, if you're trying to come to a solution, let's say this isn't a business proposition. Let's say you are in sales and you want to, move that person to a sale. And I'm not talking about manipulation. I'm talking about they have a need that you can meet, and you're trying to be the person to make that happen. Okay, that's persuasion, and I think that that's different. And I'm going to assume that that's being done in an ethical fashion, right? And so, by being that person who listens, you'll form that bond with that person. You'll be able to say, "Now, look, this is the solution that's going to fix this problem that you have, based on what it is you want, based on how you see things, based on how you feel." And they will know that you have heard them and understand that. Now, if your solution doesn't fix their problem, you also need to have enough integrity to say, look, I don't think that we're a good fit, and maybe give them some advice and point them towards someone else, right? And I believe that by doing that, that will come back to you. So listening, it's hard. It's so hard to do, to just sit and listen to someone, especially if they're talking about something that you don't agree with, or it's maybe a strong, passionate, emotional stance for you. And at that point, the fact that someone feels differently, maybe it's time to sit down and question your own belief, right? But ultimately, listening to the other person and really voicing back to them what they feel and saying it in your own words, and being able to express that, will get you through so many more situations. It'll get you more sales. It'll get you stronger relationships with family members. Okay, and it's not a trick. It's real, actual work that you're putting in to these people, and so you deserve to have that bond with them at that point. So I hope this helps. This is a different kind of video for me. My YouTube channel is Perpetual Growth Group. Come subscribe. I got tons of videos like this on there. What I do is help people build websites so that they can free themselves from the grind, the 9 to 5, having a boss, become your own boss. And there's crazy ton of money on the internet as well to be made. So, it's a lifestyle of having the money to spend on what you want and having the time to be able to spend that money. So if you like that, go to my website, perpetualgrowthgroup.com, and have a great day.